Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen, fresh from watching the Usyk Chisora main event on Sky Sports box office. Although fresh is probably the wrong word, at just hit midnight. Um, Anna Wallhouse presenting kept telling us early on in the night that the main event would be in the ring around 10:15, 10:30. No, it turned out to be after 11 o'clock when the opening bell rang. And it always looked like a long night. I think everyone knew Selby Cambosos certainly was going to go the distance. Unfortunately, Selby did not win the fight. Cambosos, particularly in the later rounds, proved too insistent, too youthful, fast hands, and just persistent and really wanted it in the second half. And Selby did absolutely everything he could, but just at this stage of his career and up at lightweight as well, I don't think he had enough left in the tank. But we're veering off from the main event, where we saw Oleksandr Usyk win a unanimous decision over Dereck Chisora. He wasn't able to get him out of there, although he did hurt him at the end of the seventh round, had him in kind of disarray as he laboured back to his corner at the end of that round. But Usyk, for all his skills and dominance, I'd say to an extent in the middle rounds, had to withstand a typical Dereck Chisora effort in the early rounds, and then a kind of underrated, more skillful version of Chisora towards the end. Early on, it seemed like it was going to be a real tough fight for Usyk, and the scores would suggest that that's how it turned out. I think 117, 111 was certainly more in line with my scorecard than the two other scores of 115, 113, or 7 rounds to 5 seemed too close, in my view. But yeah, Chisora flew out the blocks, had Usyk pinned up against the ropes in corners, harrying him, mauling him, wrestling him around, landed some of those typical Chisora winging hooks, found the target early on. But it just seemed to me like Usyk was taking his measure, working out the right distance, summing up Chisora's tactics, and then kind of applying the right antidote, if you like, to Chisora's attacks. And I think from then on, it was pretty much clear, at least to me, that Usyk was going to win the fight. I think the question by that stage was whether he'd have enough venom in his punches, and also whether he'd chance his arm enough and kind of taken sufficient risks to get Del Boy out of there. Which, it seemed close at the end of the seventh round, but it was right before the bell. And then after that, they seemed to settle back into the rhythm of um, Dereck kind of plodding around the ring, no offence intended, after Usyk, dogged, determined all the way through, never gave up trying to turn things around, and did land a few shots as well, had Usyk looking uncomfortable on occasion. But Usyk generally moved around the ring, lateral movement, both directions, circled around, stopped, landed these kind of clinical, accurate shots, both to head and body, sneaky shots often as well, that Dereck wasn't ready for because he'd been offset. Usyk would change the angle, move around him, and before Chisora had reset himself, it was too late, and he'd been popped by a couple of quick shots. So, yeah, but he never stopped trying, made a fight of it, certainly towards the end again. But I think Usyk did dominate those middle rounds. Looked brilliant in flashes, but it certainly wasn't a consistently brilliant performance compared to some of the ones we saw from him at cruiserweight. And that's now 2 fights at heavyweight, neither of which have been entirely convincing. It has to be said. There's definitely question marks remain. It was a good performance against Chisora, who was on a very good run of form. Um, but you've got to say Usyk's ambitions extend a lot further than a fringe contender, a veteran fringe contender like Chisora, who has, of course, been stopped a number of times before. Forced to retire by Tyson Fury, knocked out by Dillian Whyte. We've seen him get stopped in the past. David Haye, of course, many years ago as well, got the job done, who now manages Chisora. So it's an interesting one because I think Usyk's ambitions are the likes of Anthony Joshua, for whom he's the mandatory contender with the WBO, and Tyson Fury. He said when I interviewed him last night that he wants both of them rather than stepping aside to allow them to fight each other. Now, it's an admirable ambition, but is he capable of beating them? Because I wouldn't say he struggled against Chisora. I had him clearly ahead from the middle rounds to the end of the fight, but he didn't have it all his own way. And I think if you're not dominating someone of Chisora's level, and I mean that with the utmost respect, are you ready to vie on equal terms with a Fury or a Joshua, especially when their advantages, physical advantages, far exceed those that Chisora had in the fight? You know, they're both a lot taller, rangier, especially in Fury's case. Joshua certainly more powerful than Chisora as well, and skill set wise, both superior to Chisora. Joshua's explosive, fast, strong, and can box to a game plan. Fury, skill set wise, is another level entirely. He's the only heavyweight out there who may have the ability to befuddle Usyk and to keep him guessing. Moving in both directions, switching from orthodox to southpaw, fast hands, can box equally comfortably on the front foot as the back foot. He's a real box of tricks, and so's Usyk, but he's the naturally smaller man. And that's where Usyk will maybe have trouble with Fury and Joshua. I think, and we said this after the Chaz Witherspoon fight, and he was, of course, a late substitute. And Usyk's come into this fight, as Chisora has, with a long period of inactivity because of COVID and so on, the fight being postponed. I think he could do with another fight at heavyweight against, a small step up from Chisora or even a sideways step to just really acclimatise to the division a bit more, to try some more things out before he jumps up against Joshua or Fury, because I think Joshua certainly will be watching that performance and clamouring to get Usyk sooner rather than later before he gets a chance to improve further in that weight class and become comfortable as a heavyweight, or more comfortable as a heavyweight. But that's just my 2 cents. It is after midnight, as I mentioned, so maybe the tiredness is creeping in as well. But let me know what you think. Be interested to know your take on the fight and where you think Usyk goes from here. And I'll be back on Monday for reflections. So I'll speak to you all then. Cheers.